You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
Right, let's get to our Australian correspondent, Dan Lonergan now. Dan, always good to chat, mate. Welcome to the show. Nothing more Australian, right, than AFL. So that's where we'll start. We're very much getting to the pointed end of the season. She's getting pretty tight.
Certainly is, D'Arcy. Great to be with you. Yeah, we're into the first week into the finals, and it's been two one-sided matches so far, and you'd have to say that probably for most of the pundits, the favourites got beaten. Thursday night, Port Adelaide in great form. They're a very good home and away side, which means they play well in the regular season. They, again, dominated the back end of the regular season, but their record in finals, and again, they had the opportunity of a home final, and when I say all they needed to do, it's easier said than done. You've still got to go out and do it, was to win that home final. They get another home final in 2 weeks' time with a week off, the preliminary final, and they win that. They're into the grand final at the MCG, which their current coach, Ken Hinkley's never achieved, despite often D'Arcy getting his team into the top four, which is where you want to be at the end of a home and away season. And it's happened 4 of the last 5 years. And on Thursday night, they came up against the Geelong side, missing one of their best players, Tom Stewart, and were absolutely embarrassed and belted, humiliated, all those words by 84 points. They started okay, but from quarter time onwards, they never looked like it. Again, a lot of pressure on them to perform. They've got Hawthorn in a cutthroat semi-final in Adelaide again this week. And the Hawks have been the great story of this year. Normally when you lose your first 5 games of a home and away season, even though it's a long season, as we also see in the NRL, D'Arcy, that it's very hard to come back from that. I mean, there's no room for error. But Hawthorn, since then, have only dropped 4 games. They lost to Sydney in round 6, and from then on, they got on an absolute run. 2 narrow losses to Port Adelaide by 1 point at the end, and GWS by 2 points after leading all day, and 1 poor performance against Geelong. And other than that, they've won and won easily. And they took on the Bulldogs, whose form has been pretty good, but they were magnificent. Sam Mitchell's a great coach. He leads well. He's very good tactically. And the Bulldogs were no match for Hawthorn, who were too quick, too fast, too enthusiastic, and they romped away. The Dogs are out again, another disappointing exit when a lot was promised. They've got some talent on the list, but they're out-coached. And so Hawthorn are through. And today we've got GWS and Sydney, the battle of the bridge, the 2 Sydney teams. Sydney have got a good recent record in home and away footy against GWS, but have lost all 3 finals against them. They finished on top. Their form later in the season was not brilliant, but earlier in the season they set the year up. And then tonight, Carlton, who got an opportunity to play in the finals when Freo lost their last game 2 weeks ago, get a lot of players back, good players. Curnow, Chera, Sam Doherty, who hasn't played since round 1 because of a knee injury. I wonder if they're a bit underdone, but Brisbane will be warm favourites. But as I say, D'Arcy, that means absolutely squat. It means nothing. It's all about how you perform on the day. And Carlton, at their best, were second for a large portion of this season. There'd be some chance, but I still would be a bit surprised if they won. And I think Sydney might just get GWS. But then again, if GWS won, that's what this sort of season has produced this year, I wouldn't bat an eyelid. So it could go either way.
Dan Lonergan from Australia talking Ocker Sport. So you guys are pretty good at putting your hands on New Zealand coaches when it comes to rugby. Hasn't really worked for the Wallabies. They have managed to get over the line, but no one cares, right?
I don't think they care. I don't think they care as much as they should. There are those that are rusted on Wallaby supporters. You make a very good point, D'Arcy. It's just an observation I've made, even having a look at, obviously, all the websites and looking right across Australia. There are those that would follow it closely. There are those that would write on it and they would talk about it. But I think they're in the minority. They're fighting a losing battle of sport. I mean, it's not just at the elite level. It is at the development level. It's not as popular as it once was. It is, I think, a distant fourth in the football codes behind Aussie rules, in no particular order, rugby league, depending which state you're in, and, of course, the world game football, even though we need our national teams to be successful at both a male and female level, and we know how disappointing the Matildas were at the Olympic Games. So that's a story for another day. They really were very, very disappointing, and I think have been probably living on the success of the World Cup last year, particularly how popular the World Cup was in this country. But rugby union, we're just struggling. And yet the disappointment of it is not really being looked into that much. Ninth in the world, Australia was ranked. They were probably lucky to beat Argentina. It was good they had a win. They lost their previous 8 World Championship rugby matches. I mean, this is a team that when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, I mean, they were probably the best team in the world, or if not the best team, as good as your All Blacks, D'Arcy. But we are that far away from those teams, and Fiji are certainly very close to us in regard to being as good, if not better, than Australia now. Italy have gone ahead of us. Argentina have gone ahead of us. Ireland are one of the best in the world, and Australia are better than them, better than Wales, better than Scotland. But we're so far in the rear-view vision mirror of those teams, I can't see in any particular time, certainly in the next 10 or 20 years, unless the development improves, that Australia are ever going to be as good as those teams. And I think it just indicates that people aren't playing the sport because Australia aren't as good at it, and those at the top haven't developed it. I think they've kept it as a private school sport, and they haven't. And it means that a lot of players who have played rugby union are getting better opportunities to play rugby league, so they're going across and playing that, and that's what's hurting the code, I reckon.
And Dan Lonergan, let's put a cherry up. Thanks for your time and expertise. As per, we've got a pretty excited producer here. It's do or die in the NRL. Is there a chance that Wayne Bennett, the evergreen Wayne Bennett, gets a chance to maybe roll into another final series, or is Newcastle going to tip the Dolphins up?
Oh, look, it's a throw of the dice. It's exactly what the NRL wanted. It's what the AFL wanted. I mean, it's been the longest NRL season. We talk about it being long in the AFL. What has it been? 27 weeks in the NRL, with, of course, the start of the season in Vegas right at the beginning of March, which is a long, long time ago. So, look, I think they can do it. I know their form's been a bit up and down, probably more down than up in the second half of the season. Again, like last year, they started well and fell away badly. But he's a bit of a genius, isn't he? I'm not sure how much coaching he does nowadays. I think he's a figurehead. I think that he might coach all the coaches and just oversee the whole program. But he still loves it. He's still heavily involved in it. And they've done a great job to be as reasonably competitive as they have been. I think they can. Full credit to Newcastle for still being in the race. But look, I'd love to see them make it again. It's good to see a new team in, but who's going to beat the Storm, or who's going to beat Penrith, who's going to beat the Roosters? I mean, Penrith's going for 4 in a row, had their injuries this year, have done well to stay in the race. And as I mentioned last week on the program to Jason, I mean, how good is Craig Bellamy and the Melbourne Storm? The only issue with the Storm is they probably need to win a few more flags, considering all the times they finished at top 2. I think they're the 3 best. Cronulla pretty good. And, of course, there's still a few matches there to decide who finishes top 4. But to answer your question, as usual, in a long-winded way, I think that the Dolphins can get in. The Bulldogs will make it too for the first time in a while. So it should be a magnificent final series, which, of course, kicks off next week.
And I tell you what, Dan Lonergan, next year, it's our year. Up the Wales. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself, mate. You go well. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, D'Arcy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for joining us, Aussie correspondent Dan Lonergan.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday, or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.